What is happening, Post Shifters? Welcome back to another episode of the Post Shift Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Shawn Soole. If you noticed, I've been jumping onto a lot of live streams recently just because I have got my new job starting next week in Vancouver at Lawai and Bagheera. So I'm sort of trying to put as many things in the can right now when I have time so that I can relax a little bit once the absolute gong show of taking over two venues starts. Today's guest, of course, is Iain McPherson, number 3 on Drinks International Bar World 100 Most Influential People. I met Iain, I want to say 2012, 2011, maybe, when he did the Divine Connoisseurs program in France, and I was everybody's bar back. And so I'm really looking forward to catching up with him after so long. Welcome, Iain. Thank you very much for your time, man.
Thanks, Shawn. Yeah, it was 2012, all those years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you opened up Panda Sons like a year and a half later, right?
Yeah. Actually, yeah. In November 2013, we opened Panda and Sons. So I think at that point, I was just really hitting the cocktail comp trail just to kind of get my
Hmm.
profile as up and network as much as possible in the lead up to it. So yeah, 2012 was quite a successful year for me
Yeah.
with comps. Yeah.
So let's get everybody to start. Like, how'd you get started in the industry that we are all in now?
Yeah, I guess it's quite like a well trodden path. I went to Edinburgh to study at university doing marketing, and then obviously I needed to get some work to pay bills, rent, etc., and kind of tried doing retail for a bit, didn't like that, and just for me it was always about finding something I enjoy. If I don't enjoy it, I'll be very bad at it. So I was getting kind of fired from quite a few jobs, and then my girlfriend at the time was like, "Oh, look, I worked at a restaurant," and then she was like, "Look, there's a new bar opening up called the Voodoo Rooms." And this is back in 2007. Maybe apply. And I got a job as a bar back there, and yeah, I was very lucky. I think it was right time, right place. At the time there, we had an amazing team. Ben Carlotto was the general manager. Ryan Chetty was there. Duncan McRae, Nick Ravenhall, Terry, Brotherston, Sherveen, like the list goes on. Jeremy, who owns Cantino OK as well, was working there. So yeah, I was just surrounded by really a lot of people that are passionate about cocktails and hospitality, and I love history and art, and they really kind of encapsulated my attention with the history of spirits, cocktails, and the arts side of things, being that creativity you can make for cocktails, and yeah, that was the start of a amazing journey so far.
So, like I was saying, Panda Sons is 11 years old, and in the bar world, that's an old bar. Like that's an old bar. Like I got young bartenders now who've only been bartending for like 2, 3, 4 years, and a bar's been around for 11 years, 12 years, that sort of thing is quite rare in the industry. How did the Panda and Sons concept sort of come around? And at that time, like let's shape it a little bit where Edinburgh wasn't a crazy cocktail city either. Like you were a small market in Edinburgh, still to a degree a small market. Like, how did you go? Okay, yes, I want to open a cocktail bar in Edinburgh and go from there.
I think Edinburgh is a small market, but I think people forget, the second Renaissance was obviously everyone talks about London, New York, but Edinburgh was right there. So some people may debate actually if it was at the same time, if not slightly earlier than London's resurgence. You got Bramble, it's guess going on 18 years old now.
Mm.
So even though small, we had an amazing thing. And you look at this, even though Scotland's very small, we've got Scottish bartenders absolutely everywhere doing wild and wonderful things. But yeah, Panda and Sons. After I started as a bar back in Voodoo Rooms, and actually I went through the ranks really quickly. And I think within 3 years, I was general manager it's a massive venue. And at the time, I was looking at all these global brand ambassadors and going like, look at this, rock star lifestyle, going all these amazing locations, drinking, etc. And initially, I was like, okay, that's what I want to do. And then I, I guess I don't take authority so well. I mean, I've matured a lot. I matured a lot now over the years and mellowed out from being a fiery younger person. But yeah, then I realized actually I want to have my own projects and my own bubble where I can kind of, not dictate, but kind of drive the direction I want without as much pullback as working for maybe a larger company would. So yeah, and then I told my bosses, I think that was even like 3 years before I opened Panda, I was like, this is what I want to do, but I've got a lot to learn from you guys. And, and actually, I was very open to them. I was like, look, once you're comfortable with me doing my general manager task, can I, in my free time, come in and maybe, learn from you about, tax returns and
Hmm.
this and that? And they're really open to that, and I really appreciate them for that now, just giving me that kind of like openness to do that. But also for me, I was like, again, not being like egotistical, thinking I'm ready. I did like night classes to learn how to do a business plan, do spreadsheets. So I was doing all that kind of stuff in my free time. And, even the business plan I wrote now, and I always recommend this because at the time I was like, yeah, I've got this concept locked in my head. But once you write it down in a structured manner of a business plan, you start realizing not all your amazing ideas will fit into one roof, one concept. So it was a really good way of kind of really getting a clear idea of what I wanted to do. And then over 2 years of writing the first business plan, I kind of perfected it. But not only that, I kept them in mind with depending what venue we were in. So every time we saw a new venue, and I saw a lot, and it was actually really hard because a lot of the people were like, we know you got managerial experience, but you got no business ownership experience. So banks wouldn't give us loans, and a lot of the people looking to rent out these spaces were obviously
Mm.
preferring people with a business background. So I was always kind of at the bottom of the pile. So yeah, every place we looked at, we kind of tweaked the concept, but I guess pandas was always going to be a theme within that. And then I kind of was losing a bit of hope when we had a small budget, especially now it's nearly impossible, but back then it was so hard to get city centre. But then my friend was like, that bar, 80 Queen Street. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that place. There was this cursed bar that was always opening and closing every 6 to 12 months. And I forgot about it because the city centre was not really a path you go down.
Mm.
And they're desperate, actually. By this point, they've been closed for 7 years, and over that time sold to a different owner. And then I think the biggest problem with the site at that time was it was actually 2 floors. So it was city centre prices, but also the square meterage,
Mm.
square foot was far too big. So actually, when we went in, it was just the basement. They were desperate to give keys to absolutely anyone. I think every single bar owner under the sun had a look at it, but it was just so much work. Because I think when they sold it, they got asset stripped. So there's nothing in there, no plumbing,
Mm.
no electricity. I think just the bar front was left, and maybe one bar stool. That was it. So, but for me, I was like, I saw it as like a really cool thing. It was like a blank canvas to really kind of put my stamp on how I wanted it to go. And a lot of luck is involved with these things. And as I said, my former employers were very good to me. They gave me a lot of advice with this as well, and we're still really good friends to this day. So they gave me the really good tradesmen to use that are a bit more creative, that suit my kind of brain a bit better. And yeah, it just worked. But I'm not gonna say there wasn't a lot of luck involved. My mum always tells me being born on the first of the month, she's Korean, is very lucky, and I strongly believe that.
And you've gone on to open two more places since Panda and Sons, Hoot the
Mhm.
Redeemer and I'm going to say it wrong.
Nauticus. Nauticus.
Nauticus. Um, what sort of made you sort of push? Because the hard thing with business sometimes, and especially the bar industry, is like, how do you do another concept that's great, but you've usually it's when you've put so much effort into that first concept. Sometimes I feel it might be different for other people. Sometimes I feel like all my ideas are like all stuck in that place, and then to restart it and rethink of a new concept is not always the easiest thing to be able to pull off.
Yeah, it's not. I think for me, like, I see so many amazing operators opening, 4, 5, 6, 10 venues, and I give them so much respect because I just couldn't do that many. I think three was definitely the maximum for me. But the thing I loved was just creating completely new concepts. I wanted like an underlying feel of like the warm hospitality, good service, good drinks, kind of running through it, but just to be known more as the quirkier bar operator, I guess. And because if you go to like Hoot the Redeemer, it was basically like a kind of five-star dive bar, like the really bit trashy, all about frozen kind of slushies and just fun kind of disco style drinks. And then Nauticus was a kind of pub kind of feel to it. So it's kind of like, I guess, a modern pub where you walk in, it feels like a pub. It is a pub, great beers. It's all about Scottish produce, but again, still delivering great cocktails. So that's one thing I love, actually. The most exciting thing is just designing the place and the concepts. But unfortunately, Hoot the Redeemer had to close beginning of this year because we had new landlords over lockdown, and they wanted to redevelop the whole building into
Mm.
self-serviced short-term let apartments. So that was sad because yeah, it was just. But I'm not going to point the finger and say evil owners. They're very clear from the onset what they wanted to do. We tried negotiating with them, but they didn't want to budge, unfortunately. So yeah, I'd say the hardest thing for me is closing down a bar. It's just going through like 9.5 years of stuff and just finding all these memories. It was bittersweet. It's sad, but yeah, it is what it is. But yeah, different concepts for me. And I think the reason why I don't want to open more than three, or I guess now two, is just I'm always so worried about the management restructuring, getting operations manager involved. And I still believe you can probably keep a good level of skill and level of hospitality, but it does get affected slightly over after a
Mm.
certain size. So I just didn't want to be that person, and also I didn't want to be looked at as some big corporation. I still want to be an independent bar
Mm.
operator as well. So that was very conscious.
With Panda Sons, the Transcend menu has been like from outside looking in, one of your most famous sort of menus of the Transcend menu, where everything's frozen. How did that sort of come about? Because I know that you loved your ice cream and you've got a little side hustle ice cream company as well as Senior Scoop. But how did the switching movement come in? And when you did it, were you expecting the response to be as crazy as it was?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, so actually going back to 2014, that's when we opened, well, that's when we started the concept of Hoot the Redeemer, which opened in 2015. And actually, it was quite a cool thing to do. So sometimes you have like creative block. Well, when you wake up in the middle of the night, you have a really clear, vivid idea of the stream. You fall asleep, you wake up when you're meant to, and you can't quite remember it. It's kind of at the tip of your tongue. But my friend taught me you can train yourself to like keep a notepad, or maybe in this case, modern age of mobile phone, to the side of your beds, and you can write it down when you wake up. So when you fall asleep, you've got a kind of a memory trigger to remember it. And it's quite a fun experiment. Sometimes you write in a language that doesn't exist, but sometimes you come up with really cool concepts. And the dream I had was the film Big with Tom Hanks, 80s film. If you haven't watched it, you should. Hopefully it's aged well, but I enjoyed it when I was younger. And yeah, so everything was like a fun fair for, kids, but an adult twist. So like, the slushies had booze in them. Ice creams were cocktail ice creams. You're playing games for cocktails, and just a bit of a fun place. So I wanted to go with that, but I wasn't going to kid myself that I knew how to make ice cream. I love ice cream. So I went down to University of Reading, studied science of ice cream. Then, your Italian friends will tell you gelato is different to ice cream. I didn't really know the difference at the time. So then I found there's a gelato university which exists in Bologna, Italy, and I studied there for months to learn. But both those things I kind of thought would be very much ready, steady, cook, like straight into making ice cream. It's a fun
Mhm.
cooking class. But actually, there's a lot of science, kind of, school room environment classes involved. And they're talking about, like the thing you can do, freezing, the marrying process, time, temperature. And coming from a bartender's brain, I was like, hang on, there's a lot we can do with freezing. It's not just freezing. And I think from then I was always thinking about it. And that was kind of the catalyst. But then fast forwards, I always try and tell people, I love doing R&D. So like if I see something like a new technique, or maybe say sous vide, I'll learn it. I might not use it, but I want to have an understanding before I have an opinion on anything. And it just helps you understand things better. And we always say this because the more R&D you do, every time you do R&D, it's a kind of a jigsaw piece to a puzzle that you're not quite sure where that puzzle is yet. So the more you do, then one time this piece of a jigsaw suddenly makes sense to a puzzle you're doing at that time. So the more R&D you do, the better. And what we were doing is we were learning about freeze concentration, which we call like the OG. It's been used for centuries, not thousands of years. And we were looking at Applejack, how it was made traditionally with, hard cider, freeze concentration outside. Icebox, a German beer, which follows a similar method
Mm.
traditionally in the winter. And we were just trialing it because we wanted to understand the technique. And we are realizing by freezing you could, obviously you're concentrating what's in there because you're freezing off water, but even though it's water, there's still a lot of flavor being isolated because different temperatures freeze at different temperatures. So we're like, okay, if we can take it out of the existing liquid, why can't we switch it for something else? So in nutshell, switching is taking freeze concentration one step further. And so we're like, okay, cool, this is great. It's not only can we add different flavors in, make it Frankenstein, we can add textures in without adding dilution. We're taking stuff out and then just kind of putting it back in. And yeah, going to your question about did we think it'd be as interested for the community as we did? No, we didn't. And again, it was never really something we were looking to do in creating a new technique. But I think, as I said, bit of luck, bit of just this, and it just happened, and we're like, cool. And then but when we did see that kind of real interest from people, I was like, okay. And actually, going to it as well, sorry, I'm rambling a bit, is, we look at the top restaurants, top chefs, and, they're doing well. But and I do believe the gap between top bars
Hmm.
and stuff is closing. But I think the biggest thing, in my own personal opinion, is, the chefs have had cooking techniques for forever. There's so many. And people always tell me what's the difference between a technique, but try explaining the difference of boiling and simmering to a 5-year-old. So there's both
Mm.
boiling, it's very small, but we still follow that in a recipe because we know it makes a difference. So I always tell people even small things will affect flavor and the outcome. And then I was realizing that actually with liquids we could do more freezing. Actually, freezing realm suits the bar world more than it does in the kitchen. So I was like, this is our opportunity to really kind of corner this realm and make it the bar's kind of way of creating more techniques. And again, heat has been used for so long, it's hard to find something new in that kind of realm. But now freezing, I think it's still like, it's still like the Wild West. There's still so much to learn. We're still learning, and there's more and more things we can do with it.
Yeah, we have a hell a hell no H2O policy. So when we do freezer door martinis and freezer door cocktails at work,
Nice.
we don't use water as that illusion. We'll use like a local blueberry juice for an old fashioned, or lychee juice for a Chinese, like a Japanese inspired martini. Um, so with the Trans Am, you've got switching. Obviously, you've got Sous pressure, Sous
Suppression, yeah.
pressure, freezer dried, and then what was the last one where you was basically concentrating the fruits as well?
Yeah. It's freeze concentration, but we just
Yeah.
tried being a bit wanky, calling it cryo concentration. But yeah, it's the same realm, same
So
realm.
with Sous pressure, that sort of that R&D where you're like, okay, what do we do next? What do we do next? Can
Mhm.
you explain the Sous pressure sort of technique?
Yeah. So the reason we went up to suppression was because, I guess, to freeze spirits, even though you can use switching in a fridge for beers, vermouths, wines, etc., we obviously primarily focus on spirits, but I'm under no illusion buying a super cold freezer is going to be a financial barrier. Buying a freeze dryer is an even
Mhm.
bigger financial barrier. And I was like, I really want to create a technique that is more approachable,
Mm.
less of a financial outlay, and is probably maybe more relatable to an existing technique. So after switching, we were like, just nothing against heat, I love cooking and stuff, but we're like, can we find an alternative to existing heat techniques and, the alternative reality, which is freezing. So with suppression, we were looking at sous vide. So like, cool, can we do a freezing alternative to sous vide? So obviously we stripped back what sous vide was. You got the vacuum chamber to get the air out, to create the infusion process, then the water bath. Second part, which is the kind of marrying process. Right? Okay, these are the two things. And then this is where another jigsaw piece came into the puzzle. So I was just thinking one day, I was like, well, if water, when it freezes, can burst a metal pipe, that's a lot of energy. I was like, there must be something here. And then did research on it, and when freeze expansion happens with water, it actually generates 100,000 psi. So it's a lot of pressure buildup.
Mm.
I guess to save confusion to bartenders, it's not fizzy, it's not carbonated, but it's just the
Mhm.
pressure measurement. So we're like, cool. Is there something we can do here, that something strong enough that can harness the expansion that doesn't break the metal. So this is where we came up with these kind of tiny stainless steel kegs, 2 to 5 liter. Maybe bigger ones can work. We've just never done bigger than 5 liter. And so we filled that with water right to the top, froze it to see if it could withhold this expansion pressure, and it did. So like, okay, sweet. So let's try and do something with like sous vide. So then what we did here is we batched the whole cocktail in the keg, and then we'll add, a herb, botanical, fruit, vegetable, whatever you want in there as well, just like you would in a sous vide. and then we freeze it fully. And because the air gets away because of the freeze expansion, the liquid's trying to escape, obviously, but then it goes into the fruit just like you would in the vacuum chamber.
Mhm.
So it's mimicking that first process. And then when it freezes fully, the flavor molecules suspend, and then when it defrosts, they combine. So they marry just like the water bath. So we are nailing those two goals. But again, if you did the same cocktail with sous vide, same cocktail with suppression, it tastes different. And the thing I always tell people as well, it's not like suppression is any better than sous vide. It's not, but sometimes the cocktail will be better using sous vide, sometimes it will be better using suppression. So what we're trying to create here as well is giving people more pathways to finding the right techniques for the right cocktails as well.
That's genius. Yeah, because originally when I read it and I saw it, and I saw the keg, I assumed that it was you'd added pressure before you put it into the freezer, and then you freeze it under pressure. But then I suppose you have an opportunity that the keg is going to blow up because you've added pressure, and then there's pressure. When it
Yeah.
comes to collaboration, like you've got a whole team, and obviously you've got a teams across bars and everything like that. How does the role of collaboration work for you for when it comes to R&D? Because obviously sometimes, especially with younger stuff, you can just be tinkering away in the basement creating stuff. But is a collaboration a big thing for you?
Yeah, I actually love it because you know, we say we've created these techniques or we find more use case for existing techniques, but my brain only works in a certain way. Everyone's brains works differently. So whenever I do seminars, for example, sometimes people are asking me questions I've never thought of before, and I'm not going to give them a BS answer and pretend I know. I'll be like, I don't know that actually, but that's really interesting. And there's one guy called Aaron a few years ago. I was doing a talk in Finland. He's from Berlin, and he was asking me these really cool questions. I was like, man, this brain is really interesting. He's really thinking about things in different angles. So we actually brought him over to do a small guest with, but actually primarily just to show him what we've done thus far in our R&D, so he could understand what has existed so far. And now he's taking the kind of freeze techniques a different direction. And I think the more I'm excited about is getting more and more brains learning what exists and then taking it different directions. So hopefully in the next 10, 15 years, you've got this kind of amazing family tree of different brains just kind of taking things in a different direction. The more eyes and brains on it, the better, and the more accelerated I think we'll go in adopting freeze techniques. And again, look, I'm not saying a freeze technique is for every bar. There's always going to be those amazing hotel bars, ones that do absolutely banging classics, people that want to do high volume, or dive bars. But I think with the people that are wanting to more push the boundaries, I think this gives them more weapons to keep going.
So with these high end techniques, we've seen over the last 5-10 years, like we've got rotovapsin bars, vacuum packages,
Mhm.
your techniques. There's tons of these sort of techniques. How do you sort of balance that out in the guest experience? Where I find a lot of bars that sort of not so much anymore, but when they first started coming on the market, it was a little bit like Wizard of Oz and like, ooh, you don't know what I'm doing. This is crazy. And then you pull back the curtain, just a little old dude sitting on a stool pulling a bunch of strings. Like I always say, nothing we do is hard, but we just it to learn it is hard, but nothing we do is hard, I suppose. How do you balance that out with the guest experience in your bars to keep it approachable, but also get across like, hey, this is just not just your average cocktail?
It's a really good question, and it's actually something I speak about a lot, actually, because our previous menu, the benefaction menu, was probably the one when we first released switching. And again, it was far too many cocktails, far too many pages, far too many geeky phrases for ingredients, and a lot of text. And it was just very alienating for consumers, but also just, I think, time to choose a cocktail. They're just like, oh, I don't know what this means. Just choose one, and then you'll find out they're not happy with this cocktail because it's not what they expected. So we were like, we can't force this kind of geekiness on anyone, and we don't want to. We don't want our guests to feel that they don't understand something. That's the last thing we want. We want them to feel comfortable and feel that they can read something and really understand it. So what we did here is we simplified it back and based on kind of 3 levels of attention span. So each chapter is 2 double pages. So the first double page would be, for people that are really interested, they can read the intro, they can watch the QR code link, or they can look at the infographic, and that's with people as well. Slightly interested, they can have a quick breeze at the infographic to get an idea of the technique roughly. But then like 95, 98% of our customers that don't care, they want to go to the second double page, and that's where the 4 cocktails in that chapter are.
Mm.
And it's very clear, but where maybe it's like 6 years ago, we're doing like freeze dried blackberry or cryo concentrated
Mm.
apple. We're just going blackberries, apple, blah, 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 and make it very clear and just make it more fun and more kind of graphics, less writing. And we find that works really well. And then afterwards, people try it. Maybe they're interested. So we'll never force the stuff on them, but then even the staff will know there's a kind of a 10-second pitch, 30-second pitch, 60-second pitch,
Mm.
again, gauging on interest. And then we'll give them the geekiness if they want it. But if not, for us, it's just as important to have the good ambience, music, lighting, service with a smile, speed of service, from order to getting the drink. All this is, well, so I guess, people know us for the techniques, but that's just a fraction of everything that we take very seriously, and serious, but not taking ourselves seriously. We don't
Mm.
want to be acting like swinging big dicks kind of thing. Just we want people to have a good time. We want people to laugh and come back going, this place was great, and that's the main thing.
What's your personal philosophy on keeping it fresh? Because like Panda Sons, 11 years, again, as I said at the very beginning, it's a long time for a bar. You still travel around the world doing pop-ups and guest shifts and seminars and stuff like that. How do you keep it fresh, not just for you on a personal level as an entrepreneur, but also for your team? Like, how do you keep it fresh for your team after so
Mhm.
long? Especially, I'm guessing you have a lot of long-term team as well. So like, how do you keep innovating and keeping it like exciting and new?
Yeah, for that's been the biggest question for me. Like, how do like world acclaimed bars sometimes maybe fall on the wayside after maybe 5, 6 years? And I think, the way I analyze it, obviously there's a lot of factors, but the main one for me was like they just get tired, or they set a benchmark which
Mhm.
everyone then has a goal to reach or eclipse. And and then sometimes people get a bit blindsided by the press attention they get and stuff like this. But for us, we're constantly looking, and we kind of have it in a 5-year scale. What was our strength 5 years ago? We want it to be our weakness. And so actually we
Mm.
we close for 3 to 4 days, sometimes 5 days every January, to do kind of a freshen up of a certain area. It's now become our weakness. And just keep it fresh. We don't want to advertise that we've done a refurbishment. We want people to walk in and still feel like it was the
Mhm.
same as last time they're there, but maybe they're like, oh, it feels a bit different. Maybe the light fittings have changed. So we're not changing too much at once, but enough to keep it interesting. Because we realized psychologically people will just get bored of a space without realizing if it's the same. So we're constantly just changing little bits just to keep it interesting. But also for the bar team as well, the bar industry is evolving very quickly. We're constantly looking at restructuring the bar. So I think we changed the bar systems um, 3 times over 11 years, like, different bar stations, different layouts, different ways, speed of service, improving it for the bartenders as well. And yeah, just stuff like that. And constantly looking at this, but then also on the other front is innovating the techniques. I
Mm.
think that is something I'm proud of, and I believe the team are as well. So I have to slow myself down, because I did say once in a talk, like, we're not a pop star that's releasing albums every year. We're
Mm.
rock stars releasing an album every few years. So then I was like, when I wanted to release the technique last year, and then my friend Ricardo from Friends he was like, dude, chill. Remember, Rockstar. Don't OTT on the techniques. So then everyone's just going to expect you to be pumping out techniques every year, which is probably an impossible ask. So I think we're due one now, because this is going to be 2.5 years since Suppression. So I guess our third year.
Mm.
So yeah, I think now we've got ideas of what we want to do, and so hopefully we know we've got a technique there. We're just not sure if it's going to be substantial or efficient enough to utilize in
Mm.
an actual day-to-day menu. So we'll see. Hopefully we can start working on that next couple of weeks. But yeah, I think like that. Just again, just keep ego aside and just constantly look at things like, is this still good? Or am I just coming to work just accepting fate that this is the way it is? So,
Mhm.
so I think thankfully for them, I'm very much I want the best, because I'm a bartender from heart, even though I'm now a bar owner. So I'm always wanting to improve. Money is not, obviously I want to make some money, but that's not the main factor. It's making everything the best it can be,
Mhm.
and feel really proud of the space, and make the bartenders feel proud of where they're working. So yeah, just constantly little things. And I think that way as well, like everyone wants their routines, but you'll get bored of a routine. So you always need to have a little like unsettling, which maybe they don't like at the time, but then it just kind of keeps them fresh.
So how do you balance out that creative nature? How do you have a schedule where you like, okay, today is a in the R&D space, working on new technique sort of day, and then tomorrow I'll do banking and crossover with my operations team, stuff like that? Or is it much more fluid? And how do you balance out that nature of being super creative, really devil may care sort of mentality of R&D to, okay, I got to go have an uncomfortable conversation with my accountant?
Well, actually, it's a double-edged sword because actually we were able to say 2 years ago we were still traveling a lot, but I had a lot more time here to focus on R&D. But it's a weird one. We're really proud to, and I love traveling. But I'm probably since last year and looking at this year's calendar already traveling too much. But it's the fact that people want to learn that, so we're traveling to do guest shifts and the seminar. But because now we're traveling too much, we're finding it really hard to find the time here to innovate more. So yeah, talking about that balance, we were definitely imbalanced at the moment. It's definitely weighted towards more traveling and educating, but we're very conscious if we keep doing that too much, we're going to kind of lose that momentum a bit. So yeah, I definitely need to find that balance more of allocating time for here. But yeah, usually we kind of had weirdly, even though December's busy, it was kind of a quieter month for me with brands and stuff. They're kind of doing other stuff and all that, and just weren't getting messaged as much. And January was then that other month. But just the whole thing, this whole year now, like last year, just didn't stop. Like it's just relentless. People just messaging all the time. And again, look, I'm not complaining. I'm in a very good position, but it's becoming hard to kind of allocate time. And I think it's a bartender's curse to say no to things as
Mhm.
well. So yeah, we need to definitely aside things because we've got the theory there. We just need to put it into practice and refine it and hopefully launch something this year because we've got our new menu coming out March, April latest. So we really need to get this new technique kind of finalized hopefully before then.
Mm. For bartenders looking out there and watching your success at these new techniques, what advice do you give them when it comes to like developing new techniques and learning about, like as you said, you went to gelato school in Bologna for like a month. Um, is there pitfalls for young bartenders to sort of avoid when it comes to creating new techniques?
Yeah, I think just go for it. I think you know how to make a cocktail. You've maybe done a comp, you've done menu, cocktail specials. Just have fun, but also be willing to sacrifice your free time. I think what I found recently is that's becoming harder for people to necessarily accept. You know, they may want to learn, but they're willing to learn during their shift, which is also
Mm,
great. But then you're like, look, to really kind of focus on that, you should maybe just set a day aside and just potter about. And I know the world is changing a lot, and I'm not saying it's carte blanche for every generation, but yeah, I just find you just need to take the time. And I think there's a really good principle called shuhari, Japanese philosophy, where it is literally where you learn what exists. And again, that was what we were doing with like, Applejack and um, ice beer, ice box, sorry. And then really doing it practically and then detaching, evolving. So it's about really just putting that groundwork in. And we show this kind of curve in our kind of R&D where it was kind of learning and not doing too much. But then because we've learned so much in this like 4 or 5 years, now we've got this massive up curve because we have such a better understanding of everything. So it is really cliche, but it is really walk before you can run. But I assure you, if you look at things at a macro perspective, you're going to be running so much faster if you do it this way and willing
mm,
yourself to just take that time at the beginning. And I think also just not be scared to ask questions. I think a lot of people of any age or background are just too scared to look like they don't know something. That's something I always try show my team. I'm literally putting my hand up, even if it's something basic, I'm like, I don't know what that is. Do you mind explaining that? Just to kind of show like, just put that ego aside. No one cares about
mhm.
what you think and know. It's more your own worst enemy, thinking like, oh, what are people going to think? But it's actually just being willing to be like, I don't understand. Can you tell me? Or maybe after that seminar, just send that person a message, or hey, can we just chat about that later? And just I really want to know because I find there's this kind of thing we call Dunning Kruger syndrome, where people just or have an elevated feeling of how smart they are, and then that happens a lot. Maybe someone really young starting very quickly, maybe won a comp, maybe too prematurely, or they've moved to a good bar supervisor again too soon, where they could have maybe stayed an extra year at that place to learn more, and then they just plateau, and it's a shame. So I think just learn. You can learn every day. I'm on that believing I'm going to be learning every day till I'm gone off this earth. So it's about that learning that you're always going to be learning if you want to. And knowledge is power. That's what makes you better as a person as well. So don't stop learning. Don't be scared to ask questions. And yeah, and that's my advice I'd give.
Yeah, I have people always go, "Well, how'd you find that?" Or "What'd you find that piece of equipment?" I found it's random. What I found a little fucking piece of equipment for a very old slicer that we had, and they're like, "How'd you find that?" I was like, "Well, I got the code. Then I went 10 pages deep on Google, and I found this random little like store that was in the US to find this one little screw piece." And I was like, "That's it. If I'm going to research something, I'm not doing the first page of Google. I'm doing the second, third, fourth, fifth,
Yeah.
and just keep going, going, going." Um, so what's in the future for you for Panda and Sons? Is Panda and Sons something that uh, could be similar to like the Death and Co. and then Attaboy and sort of Dead Rabbit style, where you can start recreating it in a different
Mm.
market and start taking it around, especially in the UK?
No, I'd say never, but I think like touching on like the different bars we've opened, all different concepts, I'd be we'll see. We're in talks at the moment, but I'm more inclined of being hired to create a new
Mm.
concepts kind of thing, and being known for that. And I look, hats off to the likes of Death and Co. They've smashed that kind of
Mm-hmm.
philosophy. Say employees only. What's another one? Yeah, Paradiso, they're doing so well with their kind of the brand now, their franchise, I guess to say. But Salmon Guru, but yeah, it just doesn't suit me. But yeah, we'll see. I'd like to do concepts with other people collaborating on that side of things. But yeah, I'm not saying no, but in my head, I kind of like to keep Panda and Sons as a one place. I think.
That's nice. And you were saying you were gonna be traveling and everything. What's the direction of 2025 looking for you right now?
Let's have a look. So
Just bring up the Google Calendar.
yeah, so I'd say I'm here for like another 10 days and then off to Carnival in Buenos Aires with Tres Monos. They got like a big party there, and then straight from there to El Gallo in Guadalajara, then straight from there to Portugal, and then Arizona Cocktail Week end of that month. UAE, March, Cape Town, March, Italy, Croatia, doing the Sustainability Summit with Paradiso end of March. Yeah, so my calendar's looking like that until July at the moment. But yeah,
Wow.
I think, yeah, so it's pretty intense.
Um, I want to say thank you so much for your time. At the end of every episode, I always do 5 deep questions. And I've had people go, "Can you send them to me?" I'm like, "No, they're supposed to be deep and off the bat. Like you're supposed to do it by the seat of your pants." So, what is one lesson or experience that has shaped your perspective the most, and how do you carry that forward in your life?
Keep your feet on the ground. I think once I saw what was it? I saw the powdered alcohol thing years ago when the guy got his like I don't know what's it called, copyright on it or something,
Mm.
and I was like immediately like, yeah, I know what this guy's doing, freeze drying, and then he gets a powder alcohol, and then so I put all this alcohol in the freeze dryer, and yeah, it broke the machine, it just ruined it, and yeah, it definitely does not how he does it. I don't know how he made powdered alcohol, but yeah, I think that was a very expensive mistake, and maybe just kind of again just keeping my ego in check. But yeah, I thought that was probably a big learning curve for me. Breaking like a £6,000 freeze dry wasn't
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, I saw a secondhand one that was relatively new on Facebook Marketplace the other day. It says $6,000. I'm like, I really want one, really, really want one, but I think I'm gonna buy a few other things before I buy that one. If you could leave one lasting message or piece of wisdom for the world, what would it be and why?
Um, I think it's changing now, but definitely keep knowledge sharing as a community. We're very much like I guess open source to an extent of what we're doing, what we're finding. We're not. I don't like the old school mentality of like secret
Hmm.
this, secret that. I think to really push our industry forward, we need to really be sharing knowledge. And this is one thing I love about that advice is, yeah, again, we created some techniques, but it doesn't necessarily mean everything about it. So some people that have taken our techniques have now done certain processes better than us, and they're showing us what they're doing. I'm like, oh, that's actually an improvement on how we're doing things, and going, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And so again, that's where the benefit comes. So it's like you got more people thinking about it, and this as a collective, it improves everything. So yeah, I'd say just be open, ask, and share.
Looking back on your journey, what is something you wish you understood earlier in life?
Oh, so many. I don't know. Buy Bitcoin 10 years ago and just relax instead of buying a bar. Could just be on a beach now. But no, yeah. I think actually one thing I learned from a lockdown was, back then before this hyperinflation we're seeing now was basically, you walked in your bar, it was busy, like, cool, we're making money. Now that's not really the case. You really need to, like, with a magnifying glass, analyze all your costs, outgoings, efficiency, blah, 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 which again has made me a better bar operator. But with that, with the bars closing during lockdown, I realized all my eggs were in one basket. So I really kind of started just learning about economics and really understanding about, diversifying where my money's going, not kind of living paycheck to paycheck where we're like the sun is always going to be shining. So since then, I've been better at kind of like, putting some money into investments or putting it aside into, high interest bank account or stuff like this. And, even though it might seem small at the time, if things are compounding in interest, even just, I know some people might have only $10 a month or a week, just squirrel enough away every week. And, by the time you're too old to work behind a bar, you're going to be really thankful you did that. So I think for me, it's planning ahead because you see so many famous bartenders that, at the end of their life cycle, they've got nothing. And I'm just like, that's not how it should be in our industry. I don't think we should be diversifying our portfolios, but all these amazing people that created amazing cocktails that we all know about globally that are just left penniless. And it's just sad. So I'm like, I don't want to fall into that trap. I don't think anyone should. So just, I know it's hard to, but just really plan ahead and try and look after your future self. Someone told me that, actually, that was it. Like, always look after future Iain or future Jan in this case. And then, you'll be happy about it when you get there. So I'm always like thinking, not for present Iain, I'm always thinking for future Iain in the way I look at things.
How do you define success, and has your definition of it changed over time?
Having a statue of myself would be nice. No, I don't know. I think I don't know if it sounds big-headed, but just to know that when I'm long gone, people are going to be appreciating and utilizing my techniques for goods and cocktails. I think for me that is I put my stamp on knowledge, and again, knowledge to me is very important. Learning is very important. So for me, that's been a really big motivation for me, is to keep doing that and keep giving the community more things to learn. So yeah, I think that to me is my barometer in, I guess, success. Yeah.
What do you hope your legacy will be, and what steps are you taking to build it?
Techniques. I think one thing that's missing, and I think this is the biggest thing that I give all these amazing bartenders so much kudos, is like a modern classic. That's something I'd love to have associated with. Like I look at Sammy Ross, and he's made so many amazing drinks. Kind of Soole, Hit Plane, all this stuff, like, Simo, Naked and Famous, blah, 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 Dick Bradshaw, the list goes on, but just like, wow, I'm like, look at it, I'm like, you did it. You broke the codes. You've got these such awesome cocktails that most bars can make. And yeah, I think for me that's something I hope to achieve in the next 5-10 years.
Yeah, the Drunk Uncle is, I would say, my modern classic that is way more famous than I am. Like I get like Drunk Uncle Google like notifications when it gets written up in articles and stuff, and like every year, liquor.com puts it up in their whiskey cocktails and stuff like that. It's one of those cocktails that just does not get away from me. Dude, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It's been absolutely fantastic chatting to you, and I think it's nice to sort of see that super hyper creative side of R&D, but also see some nice grounding in business, because I think as we get older in the industry and we do open our own venues, it's always nice to be passion driven, but not having that business money side of things in the back of your head. You got to keep the lights on so you can keep people in
Absolutely.
employment and that sort of thing. And that's always sometimes the hardest thing for a lot of people is they are very passion driven, but then you ask about P&Ls and they're like, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, super important. But no, thanks for having me on. It's been great, and it's just been nice to catch up. It's been far too long.
It's been really, really long. But enjoy your travels as the year gets started, and I'll